Good evening, wandering mind. Tonight, you're not falling asleep, you're purging. Not your stomach, or your thoughts, or your inbox, but your insides. Thoroughly, historically, and on repeat. Because once upon a very strange time, people believed that health was not something you added, it was something you expelled. Again and again, and again. And so they turned to metal, not the poetic kind, not iron will or golden spirit, real metal, solid, heavy, indigestible. They swallowed antimony, a silvery, brittle metal element found in the earth shaped into pills the size of a coin, dropped into the stomach like a punishment with a purpose. And then they waited, and then they evacuated. But the story doesn't end there, because the pill came back. It always came back, washed, dried, sometimes named, and taken again. Let us begin. We open our tale in 17th century Europe, a continent positively obsessed with digestion. Medical theory was still dominated by humoral balance. Too much bile? You purge. Too much phlegm? You purge. Bad dreams, irritability, swelling, melancholy, marital tension, poor memory? You guessed it, purge. Doctors believed that most illness stemmed from blocked humors or stagnant matter in the gut, and the only way to heal was to remove the rot. Bloodletting was common. So were enemas. Vomiting was practically a sport. But when you wanted something serious, something that said, I don't just want to heal, I want to evacuate my soul, you reached for antimony. Antimony had a long and confusing history. It wasn't quite a metal, not quite a mineral. It looked like silver, shattered like glass, and melted like a magician's dream. Alchemists loved it. They called it Regulus, wolf of metals, mirror of the mind. They believed it had the power to purify not just the body, but the spirit. And when ground into powder or shaped into pills, antimony became something very special. A violent purgative. The body cannot digest antimony. It reacts to it instead swiftly, dramatically, and with great enthusiasm. The result? Vomiting, sweating, diarrhea, sometimes fainting, occasionally religious experiences. It was known as a heroic remedy, not because it cured you, but because surviving the experience made you feel like a hero. Doctors described it as scouring the vessels. One physician wrote, "He who takes the antimony will be lightened, loosed, and humbled. All heaviness shall depart him. He shall be as a child born again." And many agreed. After the pill passed, hours later, the patient would often feel lighter, clearer, hollowed out. Some cried from relief. Some cried from pain. Some just cried. But the magic didn't stop there. Because unlike other medicines, the pill survived. Here's how it worked. You swallowed the pill whole. It entered your stomach. It offended your stomach. Your digestive system did everything it could to get rid of it. Eventually, one way or another, the pill exited your body. And what did you do next? You fetched it. You cleaned it. You swallowed it again. Not immediately, of course. That would be uncivilized. But after a rinse in wine or vinegar and perhaps a prayer, it was ready for duty once more. And thus, the everlasting antimony pill was born. Some people had only one. It was stored in a drawer, wrapped in cloth, passed down through generations. Yes, heirloom laxatives. A typical household might have a spoon engraved for weddings, a fork engraved for christenings, and a metal ball named the purger for everything else. One French pharmacist described a nobleman who had used the same pill for 43 years. He had it mounted in silver with his family crest. It was treated with more respect than most guests. There were different names for the object. The perpetual pill, the merciful cannonball, the revolving cure, le boulet divin, the divine bullet, and sometimes simply, antimony. Doctors used it, priests used it, teachers, farmers, widows, soldiers. It was for the common cold, for sadness, for stomach aches, for sinful thoughts, and most horrifyingly for children. Yes, there are records of antimony pills given to children as young as 5. Better to purge now, they said, than to rot later. In some towns, antimony pills were shared communally. One pill served an entire village, hung on a string in the town physician's office. You came, you swallowed, you prayed, went. Then you returned the pill for the next patient. It was in a strange way sacred. Some priests even blessed the pills. One traveler described a monastery where monks took turns using the sacred antimony once a week, followed by silent reflection and strong tea. Of course, not everyone loved the practice. Some called it madness. Some called it dangerous. And some, more practically, asked, "How do you make sure it's the same pill? And now that you've met the eternal pill, let's look closer. Not at what it did, but how it was made, how it was prescribed, and how it managed to be both a medicine and a recurring guest at dinner." You might imagine that something so bizarre, a heavy metal object meant to be swallowed whole, recovered, and reused, would be kept secret or reserved for the desperate. But no, it was proudly public, written into medical texts, prescribed by doctors with powdered wigs and perfect Latin. This wasn't just folk practice. This was protocol. Antimony was not new. It had been around for centuries, first among alchemists who saw it as the spiritual sibling of gold. It didn't glitter like gold. It didn't bend like lead. But it had one property that fascinated everyone. It passed through the body untouched. It entered. It cleansed. It exited. Unaffected. Unbroken. Almost above it all. To some, this made it dangerous. To others, divine. So they began shaping it, melting, molding, carving into pills, beads, bullets, spheres. Sometimes flat, like thick coins. Sometimes heavy, like marbles from hell. The simplest recipe was this. Melt pure antimony. Pour into a spherical mold roughly the size of a chestnut. Let cool. Polish smooth. Wrap in linen. And store in a cool, dry place. Done. No coating. No flavor. No instructions beyond swallow, wait, retrieve, repeat. But not all pills were so plain. Some were engraved. Others were plated in gold or silver, not for safety, but for elegance. Some were embedded with symbols, crosses, stars, alchemical glyphs. There was even one infamous pill in Prague shaped like a tiny screaming face. Its owner claimed it made the medicine more honest. And who prescribed these metallic miracles? Surprisingly, everyone. You didn't need a university degree. You needed a reputation. If you were known for helping neighbors get things moving, people trusted you. There were town physicians with antimony on their coat of arms, traveling sellers who jingled when they walked, monks who handed them out during confession, midwives who whispered it helps the body let go of what it cannot keep. Even barbers, especially barbers, had a drawer full of options, razors, scissors, and the purging sphere. So how were they taken? That depended on your constitution. Doctors often divided patients by temperament. Choleric? You need 2 pills. Melancholic? 1 and a prayer. Phlegmatic? Swallow with garlic wine. Sanguine? Fast for 3 days first. Some regimens were simple. Take the pill at dawn. Drink a warm broth. Wait in silence. Return it when calm. Others were elaborate. Day 1, fast. Day 2, swallow pill with juniper water. Day 3, write your sins. Day 4, retrieve the pill, burn your sins, and begin again. It was part medicine, part ritual, part theatrical purge of guilt. And then there were the rules. Yes, rules. Because once you had a pill that never died, etiquette became important. Rule 1, never use another person's pill without permission. Rule 2, always boil the pill between uses. Rule 3, if the pill cracks, it must be buried. Rule 4, never name the pill something prideful, it offends the medicine. Rule 5, if the pill fails to exit, consult a priest, not a doctor. These were real. Written down. Passed along like commandments. One pamphlet from 1689 reads, "The pill is a gift. Treat it as such, for it knows the way through you better than you do." There were regional variations too. In Italy, some people carried the pill on a necklace and used it monthly on the full moon. In England, it was hidden in bread pudding for easier swallowing. In Hungary, children were taught about it before ingestion. And in one strange German village, there was a pill festival every spring where citizens painted their antimony spheres and paraded them through the streets. Yes, paraded. Imagine a marching band, drums, flags, and dozens of people holding up metal balls that had been, let's say, well-traveled. There was even debate among scholars. Should the pill be shared or remain private? Some argued that sharing spread health. Others warned that it also spread curses. One letter from a physician to his son reads, "This pill has seen me through plague, heartbreak, and flatulence. It is my friend, but I would never lend it. Even friends have boundaries." So what made people return to it? Simple. It worked. Not because it cured disease, but because it forced action. It made things leave. And in a world full of fear, stagnation, and unexplainable illness, expelling something felt like doing something. The pill was certainty. It had a beginning, a middle, and a very dramatic end. And best of all, you could use it again. So tonight, as your body sinks into softness, imagine the weight of it in your palm, cold, smooth, silent. Not evil, not magic, just waiting. It asks for nothing. It only travels through, over and over, until it has taken everything you needed to let go, and then politely returns. By now, the pill has done its work. In, out, repeat. But what if it didn't? What if it stayed longer than expected? What if it refused to leave? Or worse, came back wrong? Because in a world that believed illness was a spiritual imbalance and health was a form of moral alignment, something as small as a stubborn pill could mean more than just indigestion. It could mean judgment. And so a cloud of superstition began to gather around the little silver sphere. Let's begin with a common belief, whispered, never written. If the pill returns too quickly, you are impure. If it does not return at all, you are cursed. Patients would wait, pacing softly in slippers, hands folded, eyes darting toward the chamber pot. They'd watch, and sometimes they'd pray. And when nothing came, panic set in. Some believed the pill had attached to a sin inside them. Others claimed it had grown teeth and anchored itself in the stomach wall. One man was convinced his pill had turned into a snake. To be clear, it hadn't. But fear is a digestive force of its own. And in a society where the body was seen as a mirror of the soul, any deviation from the ritual was deeply unsettling. Doctors began prescribing chasing agents, broths, teas, sudden movements. Sage broth to entice the pill. Juniper root to irritate the sphere. Jumping 3 times while shouting the name of a saint. One midwife suggested threatening the pill with fire. Another recommended singing to it kindly. Yes, singing. There are records of people whispering lullabies to their stomachs, asking the pill to please return gently, soon, and without offense. But not all stories ended in reunion. Sometimes the pill stayed, and the person changed. One letter from 1721 describes a man named Gilbert who swallowed his antimony pill as usual, but it never came out. Days passed. He began to sweat excessively. His speech grew slow. He claimed to hear ringing from deep inside his body, as if a tiny bell were being struck against bone. On the 6th day, he declared he could see through walls. On the 7th, he was admitted to a quiet place near the monastery. His pill was never found. Stories like these gave birth to the idea of the haunted pill. A pill that, once swallowed, decided to stay, to judge, to burrow deep and watch you from within. Some healers began engraving symbols on the pills to bind them to obedience. Tiny crosses, Latin prayers, names of angels. Others blessed them in holy water before each use. And if a pill ever stayed more than 3 days, it was burned, even if it came back later. Too late was too suspicious. Other stories told of pills that came back wrong. One woman claimed her pill had changed color from silver to black. Another said hers returned with a small crack that hadn't been there before. She had swallowed purity, a neighbor said, and released something else. Superstition fed on uncertainty. And because no one truly understood what was happening inside the body, anything was possible. Even transformation. There were tales of pills that duplicated. One monk swore he retrieved 2 pills, though he had only taken 1. He locked the second in a drawer, but it vanished a week later. A merchant in Belgium claimed his pill came back with a strange hair growing from it. He buried it under the roots of a pear tree. That tree never bore fruit again. Of course, most of these are fables. But fables often reflect something deeper. Not just fear, but awe. The pill was more than medicine. It was a ritual, a compact, and when it misbehaved, it meant the contract had been broken. Some believed that pills could store illness, that every time they passed through you, they absorbed a little more suffering. And after enough uses, they became saturated like a sponge dripping with sickness. These full pills were said to smell strange even when dry. One physician claimed to have fainted after sniffing a pill used 37 times. Some were buried. Others were thrown into rivers. But a few were sold to enemies quietly, maliciously, to bring about a humbling. Yes, weaponized antimony. Of course, many people used their pills for years without trouble. But just enough stories, just enough rumors were needed to give the object weight beyond its physical form. It became a presence, not a god, not a devil, something smaller, but close, and watching. So tonight, as you breathe deeper and slower, imagine a heavy silver pill resting quietly in the dark. It does not speak, but it remembers. It has traveled through many bodies, seen the inside of many fears, and though it waits to pass again, part of it always stays. Let's drift now into the quieter corners of the story, where medicine becomes memory, and the silver sphere passes not through the body, but through time. Because for many families in Europe, the antimony pill wasn't just a tool. It was an heirloom, a ritual, a kind of inheritance of emptiness. You were born, you were named, and at some point, often after your first fever or your first confession, you were introduced to the pill. It lived in a drawer, or a chest, or a velvet-lined box, wrapped in cloth, nestled beside letters, metals, or teeth. And someone, usually an elder, would say, "This has kept us clean. It knows us." The pill was introduced gently. You weren't forced. It was offered. A mother might whisper, "Your great-grandfather took this before battle. Your father took it after heartbreak. I took it when I lost your brother." It was not framed as punishment. It was framed as participation, a right of return, a small, heavy anchor that pulled you into the current of your ancestors. You swallowed it not just for your body, but for your name. Some families named their pills Old Grace, the Orb, Mother's Mercy, the Last Thing. Names were whispered before swallowing, like a blessing or apology. Some kissed it, some prayed over it. One diary describes a boy who refused to take it until he had written it a poem. Little metal, smooth and round, clean me out without a sound. Leave me light and keep me near. You return and I stay clear. He became a priest, but inheritance wasn't always gentle. In some houses, the pill became a measuring stick, a way to test your endurance, discipline, worth. Children were expected to take it when they came of age. And if they complained, well, they weren't ready. A cruel uncle might say, "If you can't handle a pill, how will you handle grief?" Others used it to reset their children. After bad behavior, after disobedience, after questions that made adults uncomfortable. You acted out and they brought out the orb. It wasn't just medicine. It was morality. Still, in most homes, it was handled with tenderness. Because it was known, predictable, safe in its severity. Better the devil you know, right? One grandmother reportedly kept a journal. Not of family events, but of pill journeys. Each time someone used it, she recorded the date, the person, the reason, the outcome. and a small drawing of how they looked afterward. Some entries were solemn, some joyful, some confusing. One simply read, Henrik, age 9, took it for too many thoughts. Returned smiling. Pillow smelled of cloves. In wealthier families, the pill was engraved, not just with symbols, but with initials, years, even mottos. One famous English household had a pill that read, Through me peace. Another, I take, I give, I return. And perhaps most chilling, nothing stays. They weren't wrong. The passing down of the pill was often ceremonial, done in silence, placed into a hand without a speech. It said, You are old enough now. You carry what we carry. You purge what we purge. And if you lost the pill, God help you. One story tells of a man who dropped the family pill into a stream by accident. He dove after it, couldn't find it, returned home soaked and shaking. His mother, without a word, closed the door. 3 months later, a fisherman found the pill in the belly of a trout. He recognized the engraving, returned it. The man's family held a feast. The trout was served with fennel and wine, and the pill was rebaptized in vinegar and used that evening. But not all heirs accepted the legacy. Some refused. They buried the pill, threw it into wells, ground it into filings and mixed it with wax so it could never return. One woman famously melted her family's pill down and recast it as a ring. She wore it on her wedding finger, never told her children. When she died, they melted the ring and made a new pill. The cycle reformed. Because the truth is, the pill wasn't just about health. It was about cleansing something you didn't have words for. A feeling, a memory, a heaviness. You didn't need to explain it. You just needed to send it out of you. And to do that, you needed the pill, the same one your mother used, and her mother, and the stranger whose name you never knew, but whose initials are still scratched into the side. So as you settle deeper into stillness, imagine a small, polished object resting in a box, waiting. It has passed through generations, through grief, through relief, through routine. It carries nothing and everything. It is heavy enough to feel, but light enough to forget it, until the next time you need to let go. And when you do, it's already waiting. The antimony pill was small, quiet, contained, but the arguments around it were anything but. Tonight, we drift into the salons and lecture halls of 17th century Paris, a place where powdered wigs were bigger than your dreams, and doctors dueled with ink, not swords. This was the Antimony War, a war with no guns, no blood, just scrolls, salves, and the slow burn of academic insult. And it all began with one question: is this metal saving lives or ending them? At the time, the medical world in France was divided into two great houses. On one side stood the Sorbonne Faculty of Medicine, traditionalists steeped in Galen theory and long Greek words. They believed in balance, bloodletting, and mild, measured treatments. Their motto might as well have been, let's not do anything dramatic. On the other side were the Paracelsians, followers of the fiery Swiss alchemist Paracelsus. They embraced minerals, chemistry, and the bold idea that poison, in the right dose, could be medicine. Their motto, if it doesn't explode, is it even healing? And right in the middle of their crossfire was antimony. To the Paracelsians, antimony was a miracle. Purged, purified. It didn't ask for permission, it simply cleaned house. They believed illness was like rust in the soul. Antimony, they said, scraped it away. One enthusiastic pamphlet declared, antimony scours the devil from the gut and leaves the soul polished. A bit dramatic, but popular. They ground it into powders, boiled it into teas, melted it into pills, bullets, and little metallic lozenges. They were not subtle. The Sorbonne doctors were horrified. They called antimony the vomit metal. They accused its users of chemical witchcraft. They pointed to patients who had taken too much and, well, had vacated everything. One formal complaint read, "A man took the metal and lost his supper, his senses, and his trousers. What more must we lose?" They argued that antimony caused organ failure, that it was unpredictable, that it belonged in a mind, not in a body. And so, in 1566, they succeeded in their goal. Antimony was officially banned in France. The pill was outlawed. Physicians who prescribed it were fined. Pharmacists caught selling it risked losing their licenses or worse, their heads. But the ban didn't stick, because the people, they loved it. Patients who had taken antimony and survived became true believers. They told neighbors. Neighbors told barbers. Barbers told bakers. Soon, the streets were buzzing with quiet devotion to the banned pill. It was whispered like a secret, sold under the counter, smuggled across borders like a blessed contraband. One woman wrote in her journal, "I do not trust the king's doctor, but I trust the pill. It has taken more from me than any man, and given me more relief." And then something unexpected happened. The king took it. Yes, King Louis XIV, the Sun King himself, was treated with an antimonial preparation during an illness. He survived. He improved. He endorsed it. The court rejoiced. The Sorbonne cringed. Suddenly, the ban felt awkward. Doctors who had once condemned antimony now held their tongues. Pamphlets were revised. Accusations quietly retracted. And in 1652, nearly a century after the original ban, antimony was legalized again. But the war had done its damage. The medical world was now divided not just in theory but in philosophy. Some still whispered, "The pill purges too deeply. It scrapes the soul." Others said, "Yes, that's the point." The arguments never really ended. Even today, historians debate whether antimony saved more lives than it ended, whether it was a bold innovation or a glittering mistake. But perhaps the most telling moment came not from a doctor, not from a king, but from a servant. In a surviving letter from 1681, a palace cook writes, "His lordship ordered his purge. The usual ball. It clinked in the bowl when it dropped. The sound made him smile. He said, 'That's the noise of health.' So tonight, as you breathe evenly and softly, imagine the sound of tiny metal rolling across porcelain. The medicine may be banned, debated, feared, exalted, but the sound remains. A sound that once meant you survived, you let go, you began again. Now that the pill has been legalized, praised by royalty, and passed through generations, it begins to show up in stranger places. It creeps out of apothecaries and into dining rooms, into bedrooms, onto battlefields, and sometimes into places it was never meant to be. Because when something is believed to cure everything, people start using it for everything. And the results? Well, let's just say, not all who purged were healed. And not all who healed were proud of how they got there. Let's start with a favorite. The man who took it before a ball. In Vienna, 1737, a young nobleman named Lucas, handsome, dramatic, deeply fond of wine, was preparing for an evening gala. He felt a little heavy, a little bloated. He wanted to arrive light as wind and sharp as wit. So he took his family's antimony pill. He timed it carefully. He swallowed it at noon. The ball began at 8, but the pill was early. At exactly 8:12 p.m., in the middle of a bow to the Duchess, his stomach turned. He did not excuse himself. He did not make it to the hallway. He was carried out like a fainting opera singer. The story became legend. They called it the debutante disaster. One painter even depicted the moment, with exaggerated expressions and an unfortunately realistic puddle. The Duchess reportedly said, "I have never seen a man so committed to emptying himself. The pill as courtship. Yes, it happened. In certain circles, taking the pill together became a kind of test. A trial of intimacy. A way to say, let us suffer, cleanse, and return together." One couple in 18th century Amsterdam exchanged silver pill cases as love tokens. They took it on their engagement night. Their letters described the experience as humbling, cleansing, and deeply romantic. They married, had 5 children, named the third one Antimonia, the duel of the doctors. 2 physicians in Prague disagreed publicly about dosage. One claimed a quarter pill was sufficient. The other swore by a full sphere. Their arguments spilled into pamphlets, letters, even sermons. Finally, they agreed to a public demonstration. Both took their preferred dose on stage, in front of a crowd. The man with the full pill made it 10 minutes. The other made it 12, but only because he fainted sitting down. The audience gave a standing ovation, and then evacuated the rejected pill. One monk in Spain refused to take the family antimony pill out of principle. He claimed it was too proud and smug in its silence. He called it El Orgulloso, the arrogant one. He buried it in the courtyard under the chapel bell. 3 weeks later, a vine grew from the spot, twisted, silver-tinged, and spiraled unnaturally. The other monks said nothing, but the pill was never spoken of again. Children's version. Yes, there was a child-sized pill, slightly smaller, slightly smoother, with a little smiling face carved into it. It was called the gentle orb. Doctors prescribed it for impertinence, stubborn digestion, and night crying. One parent claimed it worked wonders. Another claimed it gave their son dreams of falling into tunnels. One apothecary admitted, "We do not know if the small ones are gentler or just faster." Antimony as punishment. In a few grim households, the pill was not medicine. It was discipline. A child lies. The pill comes out. A servant disobeys. The pill is offered. Even in prisons, it was used not to heal but to humble. One prisoner wrote, "They gave us food and the silver. I preferred hunger." The collector. In 1760, a noblewoman named Madame Rivienne began collecting antimony pills. Not new ones, used ones, from different families, towns, countries. She displayed them in glass cases, cataloged their histories, named them like pets. The brawler, the widower, the silent one. She held salons where guests could come and touch them. One artist made etchings of the most famous pills. They sold surprisingly well. She died peacefully at 92, requesting to be buried with one pill in each hand. Some stories were absurd, some were unsettling, but all of them pointed to the same truth. The pill had moved beyond medicine. It had become culture. It was part of dinner parties, love affairs, feuds, rituals, revenge. It was no longer just something you took. It was something you belonged to. So as your body continues to soften, as the weight of the day leaves you, know this: there were people who entrusted their secrets, their pain, their pride, to a cold, unchanging little sphere. And when they couldn't say what was wrong, they took the pill and let it find out for them. The antimony pill was never meant to travel far. It had no legs, no wings, only weight, only purpose. But like all ideas that tap into something deep, something silent, something human, it moved through pockets, through boats, through whispers and worry, from the old world into the new. And so the pill set sail. We begin on ships, wooden vessels creaking across endless gray oceans where illness moved faster than the wind. Sailors were often sick, cramped quarters, salted meat, weeks without fruit or light, scurvy, dysentery, fevers that had no name. And when these men arrived at foreign ports, they brought little with them. But sometimes, just sometimes, they brought the pill, tied to a cord, kept in a pouch, or hidden inside a locket like a lover's lock of hair. One captain described his in a logbook. A silver ball no bigger than a cherry. I take it before storms. It steadies my stomach and my heart. Another wrote, I call it Jonah. It visits the belly of the beast and always returns. At least 2 ships were known to keep shared pills for the entire crew. Passed from hand to hand, swallowed and retrieved, cleaned in rum or brine. The belief was simple. A purge crew was a healthy crew, and a healthy crew reached port. When the pill reached the colonies, it found new homes. In the early settlements of North America, medicine was scarce. Books were outdated. Doctors were rare. But the pill required nothing. No prescription. No brewing. Just courage. It was especially popular in colder climates, where winters were long and digestion was slow. In some towns, a single pill served a whole community. In one Puritan village in New England, the pill was kept in the church vestry. Used only in emergencies, stored in a wooden box labeled, Cleanse ye and be still. A minister's diary from 1691 notes. Sister Abigail took the sphere, did not complain, sang a hymn that night. Her cough eased. Among frontier families, it was passed along like a charm. Wrapped in cloth, buried in flour barrels, hidden from guests. One woman claimed her great-grandmother brought the pill sewn into her corset during a transatlantic crossing. It was used once every 6 months, precisely, regardless of symptoms. For maintenance, she said. Like oiling the soul, native communities encountered it with caution. Some saw it as foreign medicine, others as a curse. There's one record of a tribal healer who examined the pill, turned it over in his palm, then dropped it into the fire. It did not melt. It glowed red, then black, then red again. He called it the stubborn stone. By the 18th century, the pill had earned many new names in the Americas. The settler's stone, pioneer's pellet, the little judge, Dr. Comeback. Some families used it every year at New Year's. A symbolic clean-out of the body, the year, the guilt. It became part of the ritual of beginning again. In port cities like Boston and Charleston, enterprising merchants began importing antimony in bulk. Some advertised self-purging spheres in newspapers. Others offered engraving services. One even opened a shop called The Eternal Relief. But as always, the pill was unpredictable. Some people claimed it cured melancholy. Others said it caused it. A man in Virginia wrote, I took the orb to lighten my mind. It removed only my appetite. In the Caribbean, sailors believed it protected against spirits. They called it La Bola Santa, the holy ball. They hung it on ship rails, buried it under bunks. One captain insisted his crew touch it before each voyage. To empty the demons, he said, so they don't come looking. But perhaps the strangest tale comes from Nova Scotia. A man there built a tiny wooden coffin for his pill, lined it with silk, laid it to rest between uses. He said it deserved rest too. He lived to 94. So as you lie still, body heavy and warm, imagine a ship gliding through dark waves, lantern swaying, hull creaking, and deep inside, in a wooden drawer, a small, polished sphere waits, unmoved by distance, unafraid of water, at home in any stomach, ready to do what it always does. And then, quietly, come back. Nothing lasts forever. Not the body, not the cure, not even the little silver pill that refused to be digested. And so, slowly, without announcement or funeral, the antimony pill began to disappear. Not with a bang, but with a shrug. One day it was essential, the next outdated, then forgotten. But before it vanished, it lingered. Let's drift through its final years. By the early 19th century, medicine was changing. Microscopes revealed invisible invaders. Doctors washed their hands. Pills came with dosages. And purging fell out of fashion. It wasn't that people stopped getting sick, they just stopped believing that emptiness was the answer. The silver sphere felt archaic, a relic of a Messier time. And in a world now obsessed with control, measurement, and sterility, the pill had too much personality. It was too wild, too human. Physicians began to write it off. Old textbooks removed it. New doctors rolled their eyes. Pharmacies stopped carrying antimony altogether. In one famous medical lecture in London, a professor lifted a preserved pill and said, "Behold, the cure that made people chase their own waste." The audience laughed. The pill was sealed back in its jar, never prescribed again. But in rural places it held on. Among the elderly, among the nostalgic, among those who believed that sometimes you need to remove something before you can move forward. One woman in Wales reportedly kept her family's pill in a necklace. When asked why, she said, "It reminds me not to hold things in." There were final sightings. A pill buried in a churchyard, wrapped in linen. One mailed anonymously to a museum with a note, "He still works." A jar of 20 pills discovered in an attic, each labeled with initials and dates. One auctioned in Paris as the last cure, sold for an absurd sum. And then, silence. No more prescriptions. No more pamphlets. No more polite retrievals. The pill was over, but it left echoes. In certain phrases. I need to get it all out. Better out than in. Cleanse before the change. In our rituals. Spring cleaning. Digital detox. Dry January. Juice cleanses that promise the same thing the pill once did without the metal. We still chase relief through release. Still believe that letting go is a kind of salvation. The pill didn't vanish. It just evolved. A few museums still keep them. Small glass cases. Dim lighting. A plaque that never quite knows what to say. Some call it a medical instrument. Others a curiosity. But when people see it, really see it, they often pause, smile, and say, "I feel like I've known this thing before." And maybe they have. Not the pill itself, but what it meant. That we carry too much. That sometimes healing isn't about adding more, but releasing. That relief is a cycle. That what goes in can come out. And that something small, cold, and silent can still change you. Again, and again, and again. So as you rest now, deep and still, imagine a drawer closing. Softly, inside a round silver shape. Clean, polished, patient. It has done its work. It has passed through generations, guts, stories, and fear. And now it sleeps. But it remembers. All of it. Every purge. Every prayer. Every hand that reached into the bowl and said, "There you are. Good night, little pill. Rest well. You've earned it." The silver pill is gone. But the hunger it fed is very much alive. Because even now, with all our scans, our prescriptions, our apps and alerts and diagnostics, we still reach for the same thing. We want to feel light, clean, new. We want a reset, a purge, a return to a moment before everything got complicated. And medicine, ever the shapeshifter, has given us new ways to chase that feeling. Different forms, same longing. Let's look around. Walk through a modern pharmacy. The shelves whisper, detox, cleanse, flush, restart, eliminate toxins. Sound familiar? They don't say antimony. They say aloe, charcoal, magnesium, cologne sweepers. The pill has been rebranded. softened, wrapped in herbs and pleasant packaging. But the promise is the same. Take this and let go. We now drink smoothies designed to empty us gently. We wear foot pads that claim to pull evil through the soles. We sit in saunas and believe the sweat is shame leaving the skin. We chase fasts, juice rituals, liquid-only weekends. Some people pay for supervised colonic retreats. Others microdose laxatives and call it balance. And all of it, every single drop, is a faint echo of the pill. The purge repackaged. Even language holds the ghost. We say, I needed to get it out of my system. I just needed a reset. I'm cleansing, don't judge me. We post before and after photos with captions like, feeling lighter, good riddance, toxins, flush the past. But what we're really doing, what we've always been doing, is reaching backward toward a very old idea. That relief is not something you find, it's something you release. Doctors, too, have shifted. Now we talk about gut health, microbiomes, elimination diets, anti-inflammatory protocols. Instead of purging the whole system, we fine-tune, balance, support the flow. But even in the most modern, sterile clinics, you'll hear phrases like, we're just helping the body reset itself. It's a system reboot. Out with the bad, in with the good. It's still the pill, just with Wi-Fi. There are even experimental capsules now. Tiny devices you swallow that scan the inside of your body, transmit data, and then pass out the other end. They don't cure, they observe. They are the watchers. One doctor joked, it's the antimony pill's great-great-grandchild, except it doesn't judge you on the way out. And in therapy, we talk about emotional purging, catharsis, letting it all out. There are apps that guide you through mental detox, grief retreats that ask you to scream into the sea, journaling practices where you write your ugliest thoughts and burn them. All of it, in some strange, poetic way, is a sphere that passes through you, making space. So yes, the silver pill is gone, but the need to be emptied, to begin again, to hold something in our hands that promises relief, remains. Whether it's a capsule, a smoothie, a guided meditation, or a metal relic on a museum shelf, the feeling is the same. I want to feel clean. I want to let go. I want to come back different. So as you sink deeper into this final stretch of rest, know that your need to release is ancient, sacred. The pill is gone, but it comes back, not in medicine, not in practice, but in dream, in symbol, in the way we remember what we used to do, and quietly ask if maybe we still want to, because some things never vanish. They just change shape. In art, the antimony pill has returned. Painters depict it as a single sphere in vast, empty canvases. Sculptors carve it from marble, round, heavy, poised mid-fall. Writers use it in poems. A mouthful of silver. For the ghosts I swallowed. A playwright once staged a monologue called The Purge That Stayed. The actor held a gleaming ball the entire time, but never explained it. Audiences wept. No one knew why. In museums, it lingers behind glass. Some labels are clinical. Antimonial pill, 18th century France. Others more poetic. Swallowed, returned, and swallowed again, a cycle of faith and digestion. One exhibit in Berlin recreated an entire colonial kitchen, complete with a small drawer labeled The Sphere. Visitors pressed a button and heard stories in whispers. Tales from grandmothers, sailors, lovers, monks. It won awards. In private, it lives on stranger ways. Some wear necklaces, tiny silver beads. Some keep polished stones in pockets and call them focus pills. Some doodle circles in journals during moments of stress. There are forums online where people speak in code, referencing the orb, the purge, the reset. Some joke, some don't. A popular meme shows a glowing silver pill above a burning city. Caption: one last cleanse for the road. Even language has warped around it. People say, time to do a little pill work. He orbed himself too hard. I just need to roll something through and start fresh. It's not always clear what they mean, but it always makes sense. The antimony pill has become myth. Like phoenix feathers. Like philosopher's stones. Like the idea that something tiny can carry enormous weight. It is a story we tell ourselves. A whisper of control in a body that often feels out of it. And in a world that demands more. It offered less. Less content. Less burden. Less pretending. Just empty. And ready. One poet wrote, "I miss the feeling of something inside me. That was not food nor thought, but purpose. I miss swallowing the question and letting the answer come out on its own." So tonight, as you drift further, as your body fades into comfort and your mind untangles, let a silver shape roll through your thoughts. Let it take what it needs. Let it return. Quiet, unapologetic, familiar. The pill is not coming back in pharmacies, but it never left your story. It is the part of you that knows how to start over. The part that releases instead of reaching. The part that says, "I don't need more. I need to feel clean." And as your breath slows, as sleep holds you, as the cycle repeats, just know, the little sphere is still with you, polished smooth by history, shaped by hands, and held in the quiet center of your being, waiting, not to be used, but to be understood.